I'm Liz, aka Handstand, and I am a long-distance backpacker. I first hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018. Since then, I hiked the Long Trail in 21, the Colorado Trail in 23, and this year I got to thru-hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So in the spirit of that, I'm here to give you my 10 tips on thru-hiking the PCT. Tip number 1, choosing your start date. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna have like the magic perfect start date for you, but hopefully I can give you some information that'll help you make that decision. So, if you're going northbound, which most people do, you're gonna be starting most likely between March 1st and the end of May. There are pros and cons to starting on the earlier or later side. You'll be starting in the desert, high desert really, and so the earlier you start, the cooler the temperatures are gonna be. Perhaps even very cold overnight, so depending on how you feel about that. And also the water sources are going to be more plentiful, so it's something that you won't have to worry about as much and you won't have to be carrying as much water. So those are all pros in my opinion. The downside to starting really early is that most likely you'll hit the Sierra really early, depending on how fast you hike. So the Sierra is about 700 miles in. It's the highest elevation of the whole trail, and so depending on how much snow they got over the winter, which unfortunately you're not going to know most likely when you go for your permit and choose your start date, but depending on how much snow they got, if you get there really early, it may be unsafe to enter the Sierra that early, which I experienced a little bit on my hike. But that also is going to depend on your comfort level in winter, spring, snow conditions. So for people that get there too early, some people will wait around for a week, a couple weeks before going in, so you're taking some time off. Or some people will kind of flip-flop around, so get to the Sierra, skip that section, go hike Northern California, and then come back and fill in the Sierra after. But that's a whole thing with the permit issue. And also what we had this year was still a ton of snow in Northern California, so that didn't even really help the situation anyways. So, pros and cons of starting early. Starting later, the desert is going to get hotter and drier. So starting in May, I did not do, but I've heard people will hike like really early in the morning, take a few hour siesta in the afternoon, hike into the night sometimes to try to avoid the extreme heat. And then water sources are drying up, so they're a little bit sparser, harder to find. You gotta really pay attention to what your water sources are, and when you do find them, you're gonna have to carry a lot more water, which is heavy. But by the time you hit the Sierra, snow will probably be melted. So again, this all kind of just depends on what your comfort level is in extreme heat or extreme snow, and what that year's situation is as far as the snow goes. And then no matter what you'd like your start date to be, it's still dependent on what you can get for a permit. So I wanted to start early April. I ended up with a March 23rd permit. I was fine with that. I don't like the heat, so I felt like I would rather start earlier than later. I paid for it though in the Sierra with the snow conditions. So hopefully that all helps you choose your start date. Tip number 2, learn your resources. So of course there's a lot of great resources here on YouTube and on websites and blogs like the Trek. Typically it's coming from past thru-hikers, maybe on what to expect or what gear to bring, and that's all great. But there are a lot of other great resources that will come in handy while you're on trail. So the first one being FarOut, which most people know probably, but that's what most thru-hikers are using for navigation. That's gonna help if you get lost or planning for campsites and water sources and elevation gain and town stops. Like pretty much everything you need to know is on FarOut. Outside of FarOut, I would recommend Gaia. I personally didn't do this. I had Gaia on my phone, but I hadn't played around with it and downloaded the correct maps or anything, but I saw other thru-hikers using it and realized while I was on trail that there's so much more you can do with Gaia as far as like planning alternate routes. If you're trying to get around a fire, you can add like smoke layers to it. Like there's so much, I don't even know, but that's something that I wish I had done, and I will probably try to get better at or more acquainted with on the next hike that I do. Outside of maps and navigation, you want to be able to pay attention to the weather. So a couple are like atweather.org or mountainforecast.com. Those are really good for, like, your iPhone is just gonna show you like the town weather. It's not really showing you the unpredictable and probably more severe weather that's happening in the mountains. Speaking of mountain weather, postholer.com was a really valuable resource on trail, especially because we hit the Sierra really early, and so there was a ton of snow, and so being able to kind of keep an eye on what the snow melt situation was, so that we could plan for where to camp at night and stuff like that. That was really helpful. And then once you get to Northern California and beyond, you've got fires to worry about. So the main app I used for that was Watch Duty. Also keeping an eye on websites like the Forest Service and the PCTA websites for fire information and closure information. And then I was also even able to use my Garmin to text a phone number that would give me relevant fire info near me if I didn't have phone service, to check on those websites or to see Watch Duty. So lots of great resources there. And then you've got Facebook groups, which I'm not really on Facebook, so I didn't utilize this. And I know that there's a lot of misinformation and fear-mongering on Facebook groups, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think it does come in handy for people looking for trail angels in a specific area, people that might give you rides to and from the trail or host you for the night, things like that. So learn your resources. Tip number 3, practice some technical skills if you can. So firstly, I would say a lot of people on the PCT have literally never worn microspikes before or used an ice axe. The ice axe especially, there's a bit of a learning curve, so I feel like if you have access to snow, get your ice axe ahead of time and try to use it, because that thing can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with it. And also it's important to have like a quick reaction time if you fall and something happens and you need to use it. I also wish that I had practiced log crossings over rivers before the trail. That's kind of a silly one because I've never had an issue with log crossings before, but I will just say in the Sierra, early season when there's snow, stakes are a lot higher when you're like, you know, crossing on a log and there's a huge rushing river and everything is frozen and snowy around you. It just feels like if I fall in, I'm gonna die. And so they scared me a lot, and I wish that I had practiced on logs before and just felt a little more confident beforehand. Also, hanging a bear bag is something you could probably practice before the trail, although I will say I didn't see too many people hanging bear bags on the PCT. A lot of people sleep with their food or use a canister, but there are times where it would be safest and most appropriate to hang a bear bag, and so that's something that you can practice before the trail so you're not like struggling with it when you need to actually do it. Tip number 4, beware of the boot tracks. So this was a lesson I had to learn on the PCT, where again, I entered the Sierra early season. There was a ton of snow, like hundreds of miles of snow-covered trail, meaning you can't see the trail. There is no trail. Everything's covered in snow. And so unless you're the absolute first person in, most likely, at times at least, there's going to be boot track ahead of you, meaning like footprints in the snow. And so we would just follow the footprints. And then on occasion you check the navigation and you're like completely off trail. So sometimes people are doing the safest thing, meaning where the trail actually goes might not be safe because of the snow conditions, so they're trying to get around that. Other times they're just taking the shortest, most direct route, or they are just winging it and trying to go in that direction and not really paying attention and can end up in a situation. And so I learned following people's boot tracks that just because it exists in front of you doesn't mean it's the right way. and the people that made those boot tracks are just like you, hikers that don't have any idea what the hell they're doing. So, I'm not saying don't follow the boot track, but I'm just saying be aware of where the actual trail is. Check your navigation. It's annoying, it takes time, but don't always trust the boot track. Tip number 5, plan for more time and more money than you think you're gonna need. So as far as the time frame goes, I think most people plan for 5 or 6 months, depends on maybe your past experience and what your lifestyle and schedule looks like. It's totally manageable to finish in a set time frame if that's what you need to do, but if you can be flexible, do. I didn't have a specific time frame that I had to finish by, and I'm so glad for that. I started off strong in the beginning. I wanted to challenge myself and push myself, but by the midpoint, I decided I wanted to take it down a notch and go slower and really enjoy it and soak it all in, and that allowed for me to, you know, meet new friends and change my plans and take longer to do things or take a day off because this person wanted to, or do a side quest. And yeah, it was a really great experience. There's people that have to go back for school or are on a visa and only have a set time frame, and those people oftentimes towards the end of the trail are rushing it and trying to put in big mile days to just get it done, and that sucks. As far as financially, the money part of it, same thing. If you can be flexible with your budget, plan to be, because the PCT felt very expensive compared to the AT. It's also 7 years later for me, but it's not cheap as far as town stays and resupplying, and I had a flexible budget, but I had an idea in mind of what I thought I might spend, and I went over that for sure. I was very loose with my budget. I stayed in hotels when I wanted instead of camping in town or whatever. But yeah, whatever you think you're gonna spend, give yourself more of a buffer. It just makes it a much better experience not to have to worry about that the whole time. Tip number 6, really scan the FarOut comments. So typically, the way I do it is just kind of planning from town to town. It's this many miles, so I'm gonna do it in this many days, and I'm gonna have to do, 25 miles a day or whatever it is, but I'm not necessarily choosing my campsite each night ahead of time, kind of giving myself the flexibility to wing it. But each day I would kind of click on all the waypoints for that day on the app and see what the most recent comments were. And I found some like gold mine, campsites with beautiful views or whatever, just by taking that time to go through the comments. And so yeah, campsites was a big one, and then water caches was also a big one, because if you're planning your day and you're like, oh man, there's only 2 water sources and one is, a seasonal one, and according to those comments, like, it's dry. If you actually click on all the other waypoints, there might be some road crossings or something. You might find in the comments that there's a water cache somewhere, or even just silly stuff, like the most up-to-date information you're going to find about like trail magic at a road crossing, or recent bear activity, or rattlesnakes, or even good detours. Like one of my favorite days on trail was in the Crater Lake alternate. I just happened to see in the comments at a road crossing that someone was like, get a hitch from here and go to Cleetwood Cove and jump off the cliff. And I'm like, I have no idea what this is, but cliff jump got me. And so we ended up doing that. Me and my friend Derek that day got a ride over to Cleetwood Cove. It was a few miles off trail. It was something that I completely wasn't even on my radar and had no idea what it was, but I'm so glad I did it. It was like honestly one of my favorite experiences on the whole trail. So read through FarOut comments. And on that note, talking about detours, tip number 7, take the detours and the alternates and the side quests. The PCT is kind of full of them. So coming from like the Appalachian Trail background, I was very purist minded. You gotta stay on the red line the whole time. And I knew I was gonna have to let go of that a little bit on the PCT. I thought to get around fires or whatever, but really there are some gold mine iconic places to see that actually aren't even on the trail. So for example, Crater Lake alternate and Eagle Creek alternate with Tunnel Falls. Those are not on the red line PCT. Those are alternate trails and actually shave off a few miles of the red line. But here's why I think it exists that way. The PCT, as far as I understand it, is graded for pack animals. So when you have something like the Crater Lake Rim or Eagle Creek, those may not be safe for pack animals, for horses, or graded correctly for that. So I think that's why the PCT doesn't go by those places. But if you're not a pack animal, you definitely want to do those alternates for sure. They were like highlights of the trip. So yeah, let go of that purist mind a little bit, take the good alternates, and also if you can and want to, take the detours. So for example, Mount Whitney is not on the PCT. San Jacinto is not on the PCT. And I did take those detours in some of those mountains, and those were some of the most memorable days on trail. So again, going back to like giving yourself a flexible time frame to do this trail, that also helps in this situation. Because you might not know before you start the PCT every single side quest you're gonna want to do, but while you're on trail, if you're flexible with the time frame, then you can, as you go, be like, oh, actually, yeah, I'd love to summit Mount Whitney, which is going to take an extra whole day, basically. Or one that I missed that I'm really bummed about was I did kind of side quest off trail to go down into Yosemite Valley, but what I didn't really understand at the time was about getting the permit to do Half Dome, and I wish I had done that. But it was going to take longer than I planned for or that I thought, and the people I was hiking with didn't want to do it, so it's something that I regret a little bit, not doing Half Dome. But yeah, so long story short, the tip is take the alternates, detours, side quests, have a great time. Tip number 8, resupply boxes. So to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of mail drops. I just feel like it's a whole logistical pain in the butt. But along the trail there are some places that it makes sense to, and I'm glad I had some set up. So once you, like the beginning of the trail is pretty easy to resupply in town, especially if you're not that picky, which I am not. But as you get into Northern California and Oregon especially, and Washington, I guess, there are some places that are either very limited for resupply or literally don't have one at all. So the two that I can think of off the top of my head that don't have resupply that I highly recommend sending a box to is Timberline Lodge in Oregon and Thru-Hiking in Washington. Those places did not have any type of store or anything. Outside of that, like I said, if you're not picky, you can manage for the most part, but Northern California and Oregon, it might be worth your time to set up some boxes in advance. Tip number 9, take pictures of people. This is kind of a generic tip for any thru hike or vacation for that matter, but it's something that I have to remind myself to do. I'm not the best at, and I think a lot of first-time thru hikers especially make this mistake where the trail is beautiful and you spend all your time taking pictures of the trail and the scenery, but maybe not so much the people because you don't think of it or you feel like shy asking people to take a picture of them or get in a picture with you. And I'll just tell you from experience, after the trail, you tend to not really care so much about all those scenery pictures. They never do it justice. First of all kind of looks the same. Me personally, it's hard to even tell sometimes when I'm looking at a picture like where that was. And you just don't have the perspective, I think, without a person in the photo. And the things that you miss after the trail are the experiences that you have with other people. I'm introverted. I don't even really like people that much, but the most memorable experiences of the whole trail are those that I shared with other people. And so to really spark the emotion in those memories after the trail, like, you want to be able to remember the people that you were hiking around or hiking with. So take pictures of those people. And lastly, tip number 10, be flexible, which also is kind of generic and could go for any thru hike you do or anything in life really, but especially the PCT. The PCT is known for, especially in recent years, having all the fire issues and closures, or you've got all the snow in the Sierra that could just go any which way depending on the year. And so something I had to really reframe my mindset before the trail is to just be open to this not being a perfect hike and being able to just like go with the flow and be flexible and enjoy the experience regardless. Luckily for me, we had a really good fire year this year, so it wasn't so much of an issue. I barely had to miss any miles on the whole trail, but that's as close to a perfect hike as you're gonna get probably these days. So yeah, just being flexible for the experience to evolve and happen the way it does, for meeting and hiking with different people. I love that about my hike. Just, yeah, it was always evolving. I did some stuff by myself. I hiked with all different groups, and it's all because I was flexible and just open-minded to the experience. So those are my 10 tips for through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. These are my opinions. Maybe not everyone is going to agree. That's okay. If you've got some better tips, go ahead and chime in the comments. And yeah, if you're going to be through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, I hope this was helpful for you. If you're going to be through hiking next year in 2026, it is right around permit time right now. So I hope you get your permit. I hope you get the date that you want, and I hope you have the best time. I'm kind of jealous, to be honest. My adventure's over, but I would totally do it again. 10 out of 10. Love the PCT. Have the best time. See you later.